PET scan is both an old and a new technology. It's been around for 40 or 50 years, used to help diagnose cancer, tumors in the brain and the like. But now it's really making somewhat of a comeback in order to help us to diagnose diffuse axonal injury and brain injury of other sorts. It's a test that is more sensitive than diffuse tensor imaging, and it is truly functional in nature. I'll explain how it works. All cells in the human body like sugar. It's an evolutionary mandate. You like sugar. That's why we all want sugar. But all of our brain cells want sugar as well. So what we do in these cases where we need to take a PET scan is the patient or your client is injected with sugar water with a dye, with a tracer in it. And we're able to measure, as the brain cells all want to uptake sugar, we're able to measure the rate of that uptake and to see whether it's normal or whether it's too slow. Here is an image of two PET scans. To the left, we have the PET scan of a normal brain, and to the right, the brain of someone who has suffered a traumatic brain injury. And here you see this nice red curlicue throughout the frontal lobe. That indicates normal absorption of sugar by the brain cells in the frontal lobe. But take a look at the image to the right of the TBI victim, and you don't see that normal uptake. It's too slow and doesn't get recorded with a nice red hue, indicating a slow uptake of glucose in the frontal lobe. One of the things we talked about earlier was the two kinds of shearing. Remember, the outside cortex shearing against the inside of the skull versus the twisting along the brainstem, along the axis, where this fragile gelatinous material that comprises our brain is particularly vulnerable as well. That can injure some of the midbrain structures, and those structures are very easily visualized by PET scan, especially favorable for that kind of damage. These sorts of damages can affect structures such as the hippocampus and amygdala, where we know there are hotspots for seizures. So if you have a seizure case, you have a case where you suspect some damage was done to inner portions, inner structures of the brain, like the hippocampus, then a PET scan is an excellent test for that. You have a seizure case, you want to do a PET. It's also good at detecting degenerative effects of brain injury. When we compare PET scans over time, the same TBI victim gets tested over years of time, we can see changes in those tests because, and I'll be saying this I think frequently throughout my talk, brain injury is a process and not an event. In fact, in a seizure case, even once we identify the hot spots for seizures, as time goes by and more seizures occur, new areas of the brain are affected. And new areas of the brain become damaged because there is a hyperexcitement of normal cells close to the ones that have already been affected. And so we actually see a degeneration. We actually see a spreading of brain damage over years of time. And that's known as kindling. And PET scan is a very, very good tool for tracking and identifying and explaining the kindling process when you have that sort of case.